All right, good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Region 12 Board of Education to order. Thank you all for coming. I will take attendance. Valerie Anderson.
There is a mic.
Nope, it's not here. Tony? Here. Alan? It's not here. Fran?
Here.
Greg? Here. Is here. Laird?
Yes.
Michelle? Dora is here.
Here.
Emily?
Here.
I'm here. Kelly?
Here.
Michael? Here. And Susan.
Here.
So we're missing Alan and Valerie, all right? The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which consists of approval of minutes from our two May 6th meetings. Does anybody wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? All right, hearing nothing, then the consent agenda is approved. Report of the chair. I just wanted to comment on our Logan Ross, who ran in the Bantam Berkshire League, track and field championships and set a record, which has stood for a long time, although there's a very interesting story in the paper about this record. It was apparently set in 1980, but he ran the 1,600 meters, which is just under a mile, 0.994 miles, and he set a record of 4 minutes, 22.45 seconds. He beat the guy who came in second place from Nonawag by 3/100ths of a second. He ran 422.48. So congratulations to Logan, who set a new Bantam League record. Berkshire League, I'm sorry, I keep saying Bantam League. And in addition, Logan also won the 3,200 meters, which is just a hair under 2 miles, in which he ran at 9 minutes, 58.1 seconds. So congratulations to Logan Ross, really a tremendous job. That's all I have for tonight. Dr. Cosentino, Superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you. I want to recognize Bob Geeson, who was named last week the celebrated Business Officer of 2013 by CASBO. And with that honor, he got a beautiful Crystal Award, and also he can give a $1,000 scholarship to a high school senior who wants to pursue some kind of degree or job or career in finance. So congratulations to Bob, it's a great honor. I also want to congratulate the Bridgewater people are here. PTO had a wonderful spring fling on Saturday evening, and it was a wonderful evening, and they raised a lot of money for their students. So congratulations, they invited me, that was wonderful, thank you, I had a great time. Mrs. Colello was there and some teachers, so it was a wonderful event. On a sad note, we have 2 resignations, one retirement, I should say, and 1 resignation. Lynn Holmberg, an English teacher at the middle school, is retiring to go on to bigger and better things. And unfortunately, Dr. Stuhlman is going to be leaving us in August, so we wish her well. She's done a wonderful job for the region. So that's a little sad news. Let's just talk about the long-range planning update. You have a calendar in your packet. And again, I will update it again because every day something else changes, but on June 10th in the afternoon, we have visits at 2 Waterbury schools, Gilmartin Pre-K to 8 and Caner Technical High School. So, but you can see on the calendar that next Tuesday, the research groups are going to present their options to our group internally. You're more than welcome to come just to get our presentations down. June 3rd, they will come here and present to you at the Board of Education meeting. June 4th, we have tours going on, so if you're interested in seeing any schools. June 10th, you're going to get a presentation of the economic outlook, I forgot a word there, of the options by Mr. Anthony Amato, and depending on your decision tonight, a possible presentation on real estate. And then June 17th, we'll have a board meeting, and June 24th if we need it. In your calendar, where it has the calendar of events, June 3rd, we had originally scheduled the the recognition of the students, but the middle school kids are going to be at a state award ceremony, so we're moving that to June 10th. So you need to be here at 6:30 on June 10th instead of June 3rd, and we'll do the student recognition that evening. It's on this page. Huh? And then on June 17th at 6:30, we will do a volunteer recognition. We're going to have a volunteer extraordinaire from each school, and we'll also that evening do a little celebration of Marty, Franny, and Laird, who will be leaving us. So mark your calendars for that.
What day
Yes,
was that?
which day?
The last one you were just talking about?
June 17th.
Okay, that's
Okay,
not,
it's not on there yet, I'm just telling you in
Okay.
advance.
So I'm sorry, just to,
Sorry, go ahead.
the,
June 3rd is at 7 o'clock,
okay, June 3rd is at 7.
right. June 10th is at 6:30,
Okay.
and June 17th is at 6:30. And June 24th, if we need it, is at 7 o'clock. We'll give you at the next meeting an updated calendar.
Pat, on the 10th and the 17th, are you starting with the recognition? then?
Yes. We're
Okay,
gonna do that 6:30, little cake and so,
okay, great.
okay? Yes.
As I mentioned earlier, I cannot be here on June 17th. I was hoping that would all be wrapped up by the 10th.
I hope.
I'll be on the other side of the country on that day. And who is Mr. Anthony Amato going to be on that? Who's going to be doing the presentation on economics?
It's the economic, it's the, there's a word missing there, I'm sorry, the economic outlook of the different options. Mr. Anthony Amato has been working with us in the long-range planning. He is a parent from Washington. He is also a strategic manager, works for Xerox and I believe United Technologies, and he has volunteered his time to give us an economic outlook of all of the options across 10, 20, and 30 years. He's been working with Bob, Gary Lord, and myself to get all of the numbers. Don, putting in the option numbers, putting in inflation, putting in all of those things. He met last week with he presented to the board, or he presented to the committee? He presented to the committee, I'm sorry, but he presented to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance chairs. So he's, has an MBA from Columbia, I think he really is trying to do his best just to look at the numbers and give us the information so that
Which alternatives?
all of them, everyone. Okay, and matter of fact, I'm meeting with him again tomorrow. He's working, it's almost, the last couple of weeks like he's been a staff member, constantly emailing, changing. This is what he does for a living, so. That was in response to the complaints that the numbers weren't accurate, that we weren't giving a clear picture of the numbers long-term over many years. So he's able to do a process called net present value, so he can explain the economic outlook for each option over many years. Yes.
I have to disagree. I don't believe that Anthony got involved in the process because of any dispute over the numbers. He got involved in the process because the numbers only told, they were limited pieces of information, and someone had to analyze what the costs were and when they came in. For example,
That's true.
when the numbers were first looked at, Alan had complained, I think, somewhat justifiably, that if we're looking at the impact on the district in terms of cost, we need to know when you start saving and when you start expending, and you obviously need to know how much you're expending if the option involves building a new building. So all that information had to be analyzed into a unified whole in order to rate the options, to stack them, so you could rate each option against the other options to figure out which one cost the district money, if any, which one saved the district money, if any, and how it saved it. The information that we had previously, particularly in Resource 15 that I prepared, was simply taking information, what our staffing needs were over 10 years, what were the costs, and what they would be in each of the three options. And that's all that document was. It didn't tell us how much we might save or not save, because it didn't take the impact of construction, the impact of time. It didn't look at the life of the bond. So his analysis actually gives us a broader base, and it's the kind of analysis we needed to do. We weren't there yet. And thank goodness that we had the resource of having someone with his expertise be willing to do this. And that's sort of that was the talking point on it, so that we would get the information that was critical for our decision, as opposed to random pieces of information that didn't really answer the questions. So I think that was the idea.
Okay.
At least that's how it came about through the long-range planning process.
Great. I just also, at the end of this meeting, and I don't know if you have to make a change in the agenda, but we're going to move the tour to the end of the evening, so anybody who wants to stay can stay, anyone who doesn't can leave. So I don't know if that needs a vote, a motion.
I don't think so.
No, okay. And then the only other thing I want to talk about is I compiled with Debbie as best we could the tuitions, Debbie is my secretary, the tuition of schools in our DIRT, which is the green one, that one I just handed out, and then the tuition for the private schools and the schools in our local area, which was in your packet. And that has come, I think, as at one of the byproducts of the long-range planning, that not only looking at that consolidation piece, but how can you bring more people in, more students in, and is there a possibility of looking at the tuition?
Excuse me, the tuitions on the black and white page,
These are private schools.
I know they're private schools, but are they day tuitions? Because I know at least one of them is not.
Are they day tuitions? I can tell you that Debbie called and this is what they gave us. So which one are you saying is not?
Well, I can tell you, the Foreman School does not charge $52,400 for a day student.
Okay, so that's probably, okay.
I'm sure that's boarding. I don't know about
Okay, we can
the
check.
others. If we're going to use this as a fact piece, maybe it should be double
Okay,
checked.
we can check. So we just want the day tuitions.
Yeah, if you ask, what is your tuition, you will get one answer. That's probably boarding.
Okay, so that's probably what she did. Okay, we could certainly look. It's still expensive. Our tuition, just so you know, and I have it here somewhere, it's $15,000 and change. Are we on here?
1517.
Yes, 15,175 for elementary, up to eighth grade, and then 15,800 for grades 9 to 12.
That's out-of-district tuition?
That's if somebody wants to come in.
Out of region.
Right, out of region. Out of the region. So that's just for your information. It's not really a discussion point at this point, but it is for your information.
So Pat,
Hold on, I'm sorry, Fran?
Okay, well, so before we leave the superintendent report, I wanted to, it's my sad that the retirement of Lynn Holmberg, who has been a great inspiration for my daughter up here and my son. And also, with the resignation of Dr. Stuhlman, I was wondering if this would reduce the number of administrators through attrition and utilize people in place currently.
No, we will be posting for an assistant principal 6/12.
Kelly?
One of the reasons that consolidation has always seemed a little bit iffy to many of our citizens is that they haven't seen the savings that are always promised as a benefit of consolidation. There are middle school and high school up here sharing this building, and there are all kinds of double services. You have moved to combine them into one seamless 6 through 12 unit, which I applaud. However, I think that we have to be careful if we retain just as many people as we always have, no matter how much we consolidate, because if you want to sell to the public that you're going to save labor and benefits, which is our major expense, by consolidating in one building or two buildings, they're not going to believe you if you have a principal up here, an assistant principal, a dean of students that will probably make more than $100,000,
0.4 dean students.
okay, and the curriculum coordinator. That's 4 major administrators for a building that's holding only a couple of hundred people. I'll have a few hundred students. So if there's ever a time to take advantage of cost-saving opportunities, it's when we have attrition, when someone resigns and moves on to another opportunity. That would seem to be the best time to remove the post. If you're gonna, I understand you're gonna fill the curriculum coordinator position. I think that's a very valuable position. We really need work continuing on our core curriculum, math, English, science. But if you're gonna have a dean of students and a principal, it seems that, I think that position is about 150 all in all, with salary and benefits. That's an awfully high price tag for a job that we may not need, considering our very reduced numbers of students and the fact that we have consolidated the 6 through 12 unit.
Well- Would you like me to respond?
Good, sure.
Okay. First of all, we're not consolidated at this point, okay? So we still have the
She was
same.
talking about the consolidation of 6 to 12. That's what she-
No, I understand that. But we have not really, I have decreased the number of administrative people, not administrators. We currently have a principal at the high school, a principal at the middle school, a half-time assistant to the principal at both schools. So in my eyes, we have 3 administrative positions. I am proposing 1 principal, 1 assistant principal. The dean is not administrative. The dean does not evaluate staff. The dean deals with students, discipline, school culture. We are in the process of trying to implement a new teacher evaluation program. We're in the process of trying to prepare for our new assessments. We are working towards the Common Core, and this is not the time to reduce an administrative position. I have cut 8 positions this year. I will continue to cut positions as need be, but we need a lot of support in this building, and it is not the time, it's not my professional judgment to cut an administrator at this time.
Kelly.
Well, we are operating now with a employee-student ratio that is nearly the same as a luxury cruise ship ratio. If we continue to lose students and to maintain every administrator that you think is handy to have and necessary to keep, no matter what consolidation goes on, we're going to have a 2-to-1 luxury cruise ship ratio soon. I think we're just over 4 or 5 employees to student. I think it's too high. People are screaming about our administrative overhead costs. This is a great opportunity to really think, can we do without? And eliminate the position.
Michael?
I think what Kelly's talking about is a valid point about wanting to make sure that we're addressing our declining enrollment and that we're saving money where we can. And it sounds like you've already started to think along those lines. And maybe what we're asking you to do is to think about what you just said to us and translate that into numbers that not only the board would appreciate, but I think the public, to say, okay, because of the changes that I've made, we've realized X amount of savings in either salary or however you looked at it. The changes that you've already incorporated sound fairly significant, and those will be savings that we realize every year henceforth. So if you could just kind of put that in black and white, I think that would probably do everyone some good.
Greg?
Yeah, I was going to say, if I understand you correctly, Pat, you basically cut the administration at the 612 by a third. You've gone from 3 FTE administrators to 2. So you've managed to cut that by a third. The teacher evaluation, the Common Core standards, the other things you talked about, these are not new plans that you have decided to implement because you have come up with them. These are state-required changes. The new curriculum is a state, maybe even national level change in the curriculum. The teacher evaluation is required by state law. The others are state requirements that we have to cope with. And one of the things that occurs to me that maybe some people who are new or some people that have forgotten is that we tend to forget that teachers are not evaluated by other teachers. They have to be evaluated by someone with a required certification at the state, the certification level that our administrators have. And therefore, if you're going to have to enter into these rigorous teacher examinations that the state would like to see you do 3 of them a year per teacher, where you spend half an hour or 45 minutes in each classroom, one can imagine that if you had one principal doing that, that's all that principal would do, and maybe they wouldn't even be able to finish that with the number of teachers we have in the building. So that there is a reason, I understand, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is why you need more than just 1 or 2 administrators in the district with that level of certification because of the rigor of those examinations and on the ongoing basis.
That's true.
And in addition, to throw one more thing on the bus, we're also going to be changing in 2 years the entire methodology for our standardized testing. And that will no longer be done with number 2 pencils and paper. It's going to be done with computers, and it's a whole different test regime. So you're going to have curriculum issues that then translate into testing issues, and the teachers will be evaluated. What is it, 45% of their evaluation will be dependent on the students' grades on those examinations?
22.5% on that, and 22.5% on standard-based district-wide tests.
Right, so what you're getting is you're getting a tremendous emphasis on that and a need to have these evaluations primarily because you need to ramp up immediately to getting teachers up to the level in the curriculum and in improving their game. And the whole idea of these evaluations is not to be punitive, it's to help teachers improve their game and become better at it. So that this is all part of a unified thing that does require some administrators. So in a way, I'm concerned that we not reduce our staff too soon, too early, but I share Kelly's idea that eventually some staff positions will have to go. But I applaud you for at least reducing it by 1/3 in light of what's coming. And I appreciate that. But I'm glad I understand it correctly.
I think what Kelly was talking about specifically was the administrative staff. Anyone else?
Fran?
Oh, I'm sorry, Fran?
I'm just concerned, like I brought it up, that, through attrition, we have a chance to make something different here. We have really good people in place. We have administrators in place. We have again, we'll go over here, we have a principal, which is a paid administrative position for the high school this year. We have a principal position, which is a paid administrator at the middle school. We have 2 elementary school principals. We have director of pupil services. We have the curriculum coordinator. These are all our administrative positions, which come with nice salaries, benefits, everything. I mean, we do the numbers, we know that they're out there. There has been, with the letters to go out, there's been some moving around. We have a principal, because you've changed the 6 through 12. We have 1 principal for 6 through 12. We also created a new position for a dean of students. We brought in last year, which I think was a fabulous thing, as an administrator. I believe Karen's position is an administrative position that I left out. It's not teaching, okay. But that was a position that we created last year, which is a very valuable position. But we keep adding, which is moving us forward. But when we have a chance not to be so top-heavy and to save, after benefits, $200,000 a year that people have been fighting over for that, we could have come under a 0 budget with that, or close to it. And we have people up here that have skills that are still in place that we can utilize their skills, who have the certifications already, to go in and do these evaluations and really, do the job that needs to be done, they get paid to do, and just utilize the staff that's in place. I'm not wording it correctly, but if we utilize the staff that we have in place, I'm sorry this Ann is leaving us, but there's finally a chance, and we've been looking for this for years, finally a chance to make a difference in our, what everybody always says is our top-heavy administration through attrition, and to say, we're not even going to look at it and this is what we're going to put in place, seems far-fetched to me, and it's very unreasonable that we can't say, move people around, shuffle responsibilities to make things better and to work so the citizens can see it, and we can make everybody happy.
I think it's a bit unfair, Fran, for you to say that this is being done without her considering it.
I'm
I'm
not-
sure Dr., that's what you said. I'm sure
No.
Dr. Cosentino has considered it very at length before
Well, not me,
making this.
just that, but now I'm bringing it forward and to say after that she, but we've not discussed it before, and now to saying that I'm just posting for this without hearing what we're going on, that's not being considerate of the savings through attrition. It's not being considerate of that.
Okay.
We've also got a brand-new technology officer that's added to our administration this year that we were all excited about putting in there. So it's not that we don't feel that there are sometimes a need for a new administrator.
Kelly,
But she's not an administrator? All right. Well, she's an oversight position, I think, to us. However you technically have her with the union and the legal requirements. But that's another oversight position. And so we are in favor of adding people when they're really needed. And I also understand that a new superintendent wants to get their own crew on board, bring in their own people, hire their new hires, people that have loyalty to you, people that will work in your mold. I understand that. It's a natural inclination. But how many kids do we have in the Chappaqua building right now?
520.
520. Well, I would suggest that before we post that job, we take a look around the state and see how many other schools with 500 students have how many administrators, how many oversight people, and see if we're at parity or if we're running a little bit high on the ratio.
go ahead.
I just want to say, and I know there are people out there, so I'll just say it, if I'm forced to get rid of an administrative position, I will make one elementary principal and keep 2 administrators up here, because you cannot run a 612 building with 1 administrator, not when we have promised the parents and the staff that we will keep the essence of the middle school and the high school and implement everything that needs to be done. It just cannot be done. It cannot be done, okay? So, you know, the high school has a lot. NEASC is coming. You know, the middle school, they have different challenges. I'm not saying to you that down the road that we're not going to start to address and cut administrative positions. I'm not saying that. And if we do hire someone, which I'm planning to do unless I'm told not to, that person will know that you're going to be low man on the totem pole, and that when we cut an administrator, it will be your job, and if you're a teacher, you're going to revert to the teacher's contract. I mean, that's clear, and that's been made clear to people who have asked about it. So, you know, so we can't just cut and slash the school system and move forward. I felt that 8 people this year was enough to make the first cut in the staffing. And, you know, that's just the way I feel.
Mike.
Just to second what Pat was saying, I think that she has made some administrative cuts. And while I applaud us, and we should be thinking about the finances, I don't think we should make any drastic or hasty cuts. Even though, as you said, this presents us a resignation, presents us with an opportunity, I think the board recently, I mean, as long as recently as 1 or 2 years ago, we've had conversations about the position of director of curriculum, and the board has supported that position. Now, we can change our minds, and I'm fine with that, but I don't think it should be a hasty decision. I think we need to look at that more. It might be something that we want to look at next year, and not something that we should be just doing just because this opportunity presents itself right now.
No?
I like what Mike said about seeing the numbers, just to answer people who are concerned that this might be a place for a cut, or it might not be. But I also just want to put my own 2 cents in as far as the smaller populations. I know several instances where the assistant principal is the director of curriculum, or vice versa, the director of curriculum is the assistant principal. And I guess what you're saying is that even though we're dealing with a population of 500, even though we're dealing with 1 school of 6 to 12, that you still don't see that as feasible as having the assistant principal and the director of curriculum being one and the same person.
The director of curriculum is for the entire region, it's not just for this building.
Right, but still, it's,
Are you proposing that an assistant principal in the 612 building would be the director of curriculum for the entire region in addition? Is that what you're suggesting? Yeah.
I,
Michelle?
I think the timing here may or may not be a little unfortunate, but I think the current reconfiguration is a reduction in staff already, and I think that it is really critical that this 6-12 transition runs smoothly. It's a change, and I think it positions us well for the future to share staff and maybe make reductions in the future, but the transition is going to require, I think, staff to do that. And I think we also need to remember that this new teacher evaluation process, which is very demanding, we need to look at the number of teachers versus the number of students, because when you go into a classroom, it doesn't matter if there are 10 students in there or 20 students, you still have that many classrooms to visit. And if we're going to offer a comprehensive high school program, we're going to be running smaller classes as our numbers decline, but we still have to offer English and math and science and all of those classes, so they still need to be visited and those teachers still need to be evaluated, even though there are less students in the classroom. So while we're in transition to a 6-12 and to this new teacher evaluation, I feel that the timing would not be appropriate for not hiring an assistant principal to help with those duties. And it's unfortunate because I do see that that might be a place for reduction in the future. And you hate to hire somebody into a position when you're not sure how long you might need that position. I understand that that's difficult, but that I feel that the transition on both pieces of that is so important that we don't understaff ourselves at this point.
Kelly?
Just to correct your perception, Mike, as I said earlier, I really do support the curriculum coordinator position. I think that's really necessary right now. I just don't know that 500 children warrants both a principal and a dean of students. I think that we're just so very heavy on our employee-to-student ratio.
So you're bringing it up more to something for us to consider for the near future?
Yeah, I just think that now's the time for it not to be posted. Also, we're not the only school in Connecticut that has to undergo the new evaluations mandated by Hartford. And unless a lot of other schools are hiring assistant principals to take care of this, I mean, for 500 students, you have a principal, you have a dean, you have a curriculum coordinator handling that academic portion. I don't believe that consolidation up at Chicago of all our schools or some of our schools is going to have the promised cost reductions overall. When I see this kind of opportunity present itself, and there are always reasons not to eliminate a position, our biggest line item in our regional budget is employee costs. It's salaries and benefits. And these are tenured people, so once they come on, it's very hard to reduce a full-time staff person. And we don't like to do that because it's hard on the employees as well. But if we can't reduce with this small consolidation, we have to keep everybody in place. We have to have, new curriculum coordinator, technology person, new dean of students, and we can't reduce even one administrative position. I do not believe, and I think a lot of the public is not going to believe, that you are going to affect cost savings with a major regional consolidation.
I just want to say one more time, just to clarify. In the current school year, there is a high school principal and a middle school principal, and they each have a half-time assistant to the principal. So that's 3 administrators currently in this building who evaluate staff, visit classrooms, and do all the things that principals and assistant principals do. Next year, there will be 1 6-12 principal, 1 6-12 assistant principal. That's it. Okay? And there will be a .4 dean to take away some of the discipline that has to happen in this configuration. So I have taken away 1 administrator and added a .4 dean. If you want to do the number, I have taken away .6 of, if you want to call it administrative, and we have only lost, we're only losing 20 students in this building. from next year to this year. That's it, 20 students. And maybe, I'm trying to think, one teacher, maybe 2 teachers? So a couple have left. There was an English teacher and there was another, maybe 2 teachers. So we are not, believe me, I went through that budget with a fine-tooth comb. If I could have gotten and cut an administrative position, I would have. And we are, as we consolidate, going to save money on staff. But we currently, I can tell you, my former district, their middle school has 660 students, and there's one principal, 2 administrators, and 3 guidance counselors. So there's 3 administrators to 660 kids in BMS, okay? You cannot, this will not be an academic institution if you have 1 principal and no one else as an administrator. I'm telling you, because all it will be is all day long, catch up on this and that, and the other thing that I want people to understand is whether you have a district like Danbury with 4,000 kids or a district like Region 12 with 500 kids, the paperwork, the state mandates are all the same. You still have to bring in all the reports. You still have to do all the federal reports. You still have to do all the budgeting. You still have to do all the accounting. You still have to do all the pupil reports. You still have to do all the curriculum. None of that changes. So, you know, it's, if I thought we could have done without an administrator, I would have recommended that as a cut. And I didn't. So that's how that's what, you know.
When do you plan to post it?
I plan on posting it tomorrow.
All right. Is there anything else? Okay. Anything else for the superintendent's report?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Next, policy. Michelle?
All right. So on our agenda for tonight is the second reading of policy 5118.2, children of non-resident certified staff. We passed it for a first reading. Dr. Cosentino sent it to our attorney as was requested, and what I'm handing out to you is what the attorney returned back to us. I want everyone to take a minute to look at it. In essence, the policy has not changed. However, they chose to change the language. They chose to say the same thing with different words.
Yes.
So the bold is, everything in bold are the additions. The line throughs are omissions. We looked at it in the policy committee right before this and made two word changes and 1 capitalization, and we can share those with you. But I think we could just take a minute and look at it, since there is considerable change.
You want to tell us the other changes you made, Michelle?
So for number 4, at the bottom, it says, this policy does not obligate the Board of Education to provide special education programs or services or create, and instead of unique programs, we changed that to new district programs. We didn't want anyone to think it was unique to the child, but unique to the district. So we changed that to unique district programs for, and then non-resident students, just to make it clear that, because we know that we're obligated to provide programs for resident students.
You had one other capitalization, you said?
We missed a period on number 3. And at the beginning of number 3, non-resident should be lowercase.
5118.2 is before us as amended for a second reading. Greg?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Have we done any type of survey? I thought I heard this said last time. when we-
Right, I have not done the survey, but I did say in policy that I'd be happy tomorrow to send out an email to staff to get an idea who's interested,
Should it pass?
should it pass. Right.
Yeah, I guess the question is, do we expect this to be a large number of student enrollees that might impact cost parameters for the district? Or we don't know?
And I don't believe it's going to, there's only one class in one of the schools, of the elementary schools, that's even near a cap. But they can't choose their school, so if somebody wanted to go, I think it's third or fourth grade at Washington Primary, that's a little high. All the other classes have room, so if it would be a third or fourth grade, we just say you'd have to go to Burnham or Booth Free. Everything else is plenty of room. And so it's not going to be a cost.
And how many people are eligible for, how many staff members are eligible for this?
I want to say, don't quote me, but I want to say about 110.
That was my guess, somewhere between
Yeah.
110 and 120.
Eligible in that they work here and they have children of school age.
No, in that they work here.
You might only have a fraction of those
Yes.
children of the school ages.
It is a nice, an attractive piece when you're looking to hire some people, especially with young children.
Right. And I noticed that the wording has been changed so that the superintendent now has the authority to end this relationship
Yes.
in the event that it's not in the best interest of the student or the region.
Right. Council felt that that was important to include.
All right, so so we no longer, if it did become an issue in terms of the numbers and they were creating cost parameters, we would now have the ability to end the program. So I think it does not seem like this is really anything that's going to cost us anything at all, because you're recovering with the 5% tuition, you're recovering the costs, the out-of-pocket costs for materials and whatnot. All you're doing is filling up surplus capacity that otherwise would be empty. It's like offering that seat on the airplane when the plane's taking off and there's no one sitting in it for a rate that covers, this is even better because this covers the gas.
Right.
Anyone else? Is it a motion?
Yes, I'll move to accept this. Is this now officially the second or first?
Second reading.
Because it's a different,
I know, the wording is different. We talked about that in committee. We felt that since the policy in essence was the same, that if people are comfortable with the wording, we would go ahead for a second reading. If people are not comfortable with that, I mean, it's kind of new territory here.
all right,
so-
well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to move to accept it for a first reading of what's in essence a substituted policy for the previous one. And that way we don't have an issue of whether it had the proper number of readings down the road. If someone doesn't like that, you can always not quote it in.
Great, I second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded as a first reading. Alan?
I ordinarily would completely agree with you, and I actually have, there's been, to my mind, a big change in this, but we have to move this along, 'cause we have to make these offers. We've got to do this on a expedient nature so that
We'll be back in next
staff
month.
can make plans.
If this
Is
passes,
this getting too tight, Pat, or?
Well, we have a meeting every Monday in June, so June 3rd can be the second reading, and then the acceptance would be June 10th, correct? That's all, there's only two readings?
this is the proposal is that this be the first. If it was June 3rd, it could be accepted, and it would be, if it passed as a second reading on, for example, June 3rd, whenever it passes second reading, it's done.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that, okay.
Michael?
I would be okay with it being a first reading as long as Pat follows through with the survey, because I think it would be important to start their thinking process.
Sure.
Because as parents, they're going to want to start that now as soon as they can.
Anyone else? Yes, Susan?
Should we broaden this, school-age children to include, what do you call them, guards? If someone is the guardian of children?
Where are
foster
you exactly? Can you
parent?
tell me?
Is that all, this is, going to that first paragraph.
Well, I think-
Legal guardian?
It's a rather, how it's worded seems rather narrow.
I'm sorry, Susan, where exactly are you looking?
Oh, this is in the first paragraph.
Children of.
except eligible school-age children of non-resident staff. First sentence.
Yes,
of the
all right, I
sentence.
see.
So I was just wondering if this can be broadened or to include
If you are a guardian, though, you would still call them your children, correct?
I think
Legally?
so.
foster care children, any, you know, I mean, any child who is,
I mean, we'd have to like kick that back
because
to
what
the
we're
lawyer, because
asking is
whatever-
any school-age child of resident, of staff member, right? I mean,
Yeah, what is this?
Jim, do you have a thought on that? Because from the legal perspective, I think if we had said, use the word, who are natural children of,
oh, you can't
who
do
are
that.
birth children of, I think that would definitely be a problem. I think this includes anyone who has that custodial relationship. It might be a grandparent.
Custodial.
It might be a grandparent. They live in the town.
Right.
Or a town when they live with a grandparent because for whatever reason, they don't live with a parent. And so I think this
Custodial
probably,
seems more broad than guardian is here.
I think this
I
is
think it's
broad,
implied.
it's as broad as you're suggesting it is. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just want to ask Jim if he had any thoughts on it.
Yeah, I don't read it that way. Except eligible school-age children of. That means this is your child. You
Yeah,
could
but
have
what's your
some-
child? Does your child include the ones you birthed, the ones you adopted, the ones you have legal guardianship over? It includes all of those.
All
No, I don't
Yes.
believe it does include children that you have
Oh.
guardianship of.
I'm sorry, I just looked this up. A person under legal guardianship is called a ward.
That's, okay.
Yeah, but that's only, I'm not sure, I don't know if that has a, I don't know what kind of legal connotation it has. Maybe we need to know that, that's why there should be a first reading.
Well, I'm just.
Good point, though,
Because the
good
spirit
catch.
of, well, the spirit of it is the same, right? I mean, we want, if there are staff who are here who have in their care, school-age children, those school-age children can be eligible.
I think that's a good point to just add in children or ward of non-resident.
about
Just
that?
very simple addition.
Whatever the actual word is.
Can we ask our lawyer, though, to vet that, just to make sure it doesn't create some unintended problem? That's my only concern. I'm with you, I don't have a problem with it.
Just add ward.
Just
Greg.
add ward, it sounds like you have.
No?
Child or ward. Children or ward.
Ward is a legal term of art under Connecticut law. It might be
It is, it is.
in general, but
You're a guardian, the person that you are the guardian of is your ward. As a legal matter, I do guardianship work.
okay,
I have wards.
good.
They're not my children.
All right, so
They're
we've
not my
got
children.
Oh,
the
goodness.
addition of ward.
So you want me to check,
You're up for
or you're
first.
just gonna put it in?
Just gonna put it in.
Put it in.
Crazy, put it in.
Living on the edge, huh?
Right on
On the edge.
So eligible school-age children or wards of
Non-resident staff.
non-resident staff.
And do we need to change that in title as well, and anywhere else? Probably anywhere else,
Jim,
right?
does this cover stepchildren?
Yes.
Your ward.
Yes.
Did they live
They would
with
be your
you?
wards.
You
Aren't
are,
they the wards?
You're the
No, no, a
custodial
stepchild
parent.
is not a ward.
Legally anything to a
they're your
stepchild.
child.
No, stepchild.
Like
Not
marriage.
a step parent is not legally
Well, you know what,
connected to the
it
child.
does say that they have to apply to, it's at the discretion of the superintendent, so there's a little bit of, they can declare some residency of a stepchild.
I think we should, I don't have a problem with ward, so I think just school-age children or ward of
But we need to
non-resident
change
staff.
it everywhere.
But could we at least just, the only reason I want to ask counsel on this is because you understand that if it doesn't include specifically stepchildren, and the employee is the mother, and the child is the child, the stepchild of the mother, but the child of the father, then it's not the employee's child under the way you've interpreted this reading.
Not a ward,
So I don't want to,
Okay, I will.
that's all I'm saying
check.
is,
Because I'm gonna retype it anyway, and I'll just ask them, please reread it and note the word
what
addition.
happened.
To be sure.
Yeah.
What would be?
Yeah, just that, okay. All right, so just to
All
make
right.
sure that all children that
All bases are covered.
living with them, eligible,
Child.
good, I should say that.
All right.
Can I?
Yes, Susan.
Thing. All right.
Hold on. Hold on.
Under number 7, satisfactory, it talks about a non-resident student's continuation. It has certain obligations on their part, including satisfactory academic progress. That seems a little vague. It seems as though you could request a child leave the school system because they are not making satisfactory progress. That seems very subjective. And is there,
You're thinking elementary, think high school. When somebody's here for a year, should earn 8 credits and only earns 1.
so it's got nothing to do with grade
No,
11 per se, but
I think that it's left to the superintendent's discretion. If the superintendent were to make an adverse decision against a child, the people would have a right to appeal, eventually end up before the Board of Ed, and the board would decide it.
In fact, maybe some parents would think this is a good thing to motivate their child to perform.
Is there anything else? All right, well then, it's been moved and seconded for a first reading with the issue about the ward and stepchildren issue that the superintendent will look at. With that said, is
Fill in the blank.
anything else? All right, all those in favor of approving it for a first reading, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, thank you. We'll see this back in June.
Jim,
Oh, I'm
who
sorry.
actually made the motion?
Greg.
Are you making it, or is?
No,
Greg
Greg.
Greg, I
Okay,
think-
thank you.
Franny seconded.
I don't blame you for
So
having
this
to
is
ask
going to be on
that.
the next, as a second reading.
That's cool.
All right, item 6, to consider and if appropriate, to approve funds not to exceed $17,000 to retain a real estate consultant for the purpose of researching how the long-range planning committee options impact real estate values. Dr. Cousin.
Well, I just wanted to, one of the, again, byproducts of the long-range planning is the question, not only how does closing schools impact real estate values, how does building a new school impact real estate values? All of those questions, and they've come up in many different forms in the groups. And it was brought up by a board member that we should hire a consultant to look into it. I did ask Greg to help me, being that he's involved in real estate law. He came up with someone and with a quote of $17,000, which he can speak on. Michelle also has been looking, other people have been looking, and I just, I gave the board in their minutes a sheet of different real estate links. I gave you a copy of Jonathan Costa's point of view. It was in the paper, where he has quoted saying that, and this is what I have said also, everything you read, you can take a line from it and you can go either way, either point of view. So I didn't want, although when we found out it was 17,000, it was brought to my attention that maybe we should forget it, I did not want to be the person to say forget it. I wanted to bring it to the board for discussion so that you could decide.
Greg, you had something to do with finding this person?
Well, I suggested when the question came up of this, I had originally not been that, I've looked at hundreds, if not more than 1,000 appraisals in my life, and I've never seen one that ever took into consideration the value of a home in a community that had anything to do with the proximity to a school or the presence of a school. It's not something that's on the standard Fannie Mae Freddie Mac appraisal form. It's not something that I've seen. It does identify that, what school sometimes it's in, but it doesn't really list the school as a factor that determines value. It doesn't, for example, if a home is listed in a town and there are 2 potential high schools that you could go to, it doesn't list that the valuation, it lists the impacts on valuation. If it compares 2 homes, it doesn't say that I'm going to reduce the value of this one by $20,000 because it's in this other district. It's not in that school district, and that's a better school. It doesn't really make those slice and dice. It doesn't even consider that. What it does consider is how many bedrooms you have, how many bathrooms you have, how many square feet you have, how many acres of land you have, how many fireplaces you have. These are things that go into the valuation of a home by an appraiser. So since I've looked at a lot of these, I was a little skeptical, and I'm thinking that I'm not sure this is something that will be able to be proved because I don't think they look at these things. However, if you're going to hire a firm to look at this, and I think we probably should, because I think if we're going to get this issue off the table, one way or another, we need to know whether this is an impact. We need to know consider the fiscal impact because it goes to the third consideration of impacts on the community. If we're going to find out, we need a firm with the proper expertise. You don't want to just hire a garden variety appraiser who does appraisals, but that's all they do. You need a firm that's got some high-level valuation capabilities. This particular firm is a firm that does town-wide reassessments, so they're used to looking at large-scale models to impact, to figure out what reassessments are on a large-scale basis. They've got people who have the proper appraisal designations. They have passed rigorous educational requirements. When you're an MAI appraiser, for example, you've had to pass 12 examinations. You've had to have, I don't know, it's 4,000 hours of appraisal work. I mean, it's like, you know, they don't just let anybody into a cockpit to fly an aircraft when there are people that are paying to ride on it. Well, they don't let anybody be an MAI appraiser who hasn't achieved these levels of understanding theory and complex issues and valuation. So you want someone, not someone that just understands how to apply the equations. You want someone that understands the theory behind the equations. So we needed to get someone of that capability, and there's only a handful of people like that around. This was one firm that I knew was here in the state and would have experience in these areas and would know the economic markets and had experience appraising not just in inner city markets, but rural markets and suburban markets, and has a breadth of experience. Michelle, I think, also found another firm, and I looked at the capabilities of that firm, and they seem to also possess some of these analytical capabilities. So I don't think it really matters what firm you use. It matters whether the firm has the capability to render what is, in essence, a one-off, never really been done before analysis. And then the question is, and this will, the answer you may get for your, and I think the deal on this one was this firm was going to charge $7,000, but up to a maximum of $17,000. That's the way that the thing was
What is the name of the firm that you found?
Karen and Fazio. I think that what you may get for this is an answer that we don't have a conclusion for you. Okay, you may not get an answer as to what the conclusion is because there may be an insufficient amount of statistical evidence of towns with the same demographics as the 3 towns in Region 12 in terms of the types of schools and the proximity. Also recognize Connecticut is a unique state because only one other state in the country has every square inch of land within the state divided into a town, into a municipality, and that's Vermont. Only Connecticut and Vermont are the only 2 states that do that. And Connecticut's and Vermont's are historical accidents. They're accidents of the way the state developed. And it has to do with how the state developed. So I'm telling you that it's unusual, and therefore it's going to require someone with the ability to study something that hasn't been studied and is unusual. So that's all I'm suggesting is you want a firm that's got the capabilities to do it. That's all.
Thank you. Mike?
I guess I have 3 concerns. Number 1 being, you know, we've been talking about saving money, and $17,000 seems like an awful lot of money, particularly if we're thinking that the results might be mixed. I don't know whether that would be a wise use of money. My second concern would be the idea that schools and school districts don't necessarily matter. I think from a legal perspective might be true, from an administrator's perspective might be true, but I don't think it's counterintuitive that that's true from a realtor's perspective and from a parent's perspective. There's tons of examples that I think every one of us could give of parents who move to certain towns because of the schools, or parents who avoid moving to a certain neighborhood even because of a school. And so that's just a reality I think that we need to address. The other point that you made where you were talking about it doesn't necessarily matter which firm we use, I don't necessarily agree with either, because if these firms, both of these firms are Connecticut firms, it's never really going to answer the question that we have, because we're looking at possibly closing elementary schools in a town, and right now the state of Connecticut, there is no town in the state that does not have its own school. So unless we go to another state where this has been done, I don't think having a local firm makes a whole lot of sense for looking at this question.
Well, I must say, Mike, it seems to me the first 2 arguments you made are contrary to each other. First, you said that, well, I can't remember what you said, but that, you know, you don't need it, but yet it matters to parents. I don't want to monopolize. I'll take my turn. Michelle?
You're done? That's it? Okay.
No, I'm not done.
All right. Well, I just wanted to say that I find the cost unfortunate, but I think that the study is necessary. This question has come up again and again. And I think that we as a region would learn a lot from whatever it is they have to say. I mean, there's a difference between a house's value and the appraisal versus, that really doesn't speak to the attractiveness of a family, because it might change the value for people moving who don't have families. So there are a lot of moving parts of this picture, and I think we need an expert to help us interpret a lot of this information. And just to give a little background as to the firm, finding somebody to do this has not been easy. And I started by contacting Malone and Broom, who advertise in the CABE Journal all the time, and they do projects in Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, South Carolina, and Vermont. And they told me that and it said right there that they do housing analysis and enrollment projections and school redistricting. I mean, this is their thing. They told me that they could not do this, but they gave me the recommendations of people that they would outsource this to. One of those firms dealt mostly with commercial, so I contacted this, it was called AMS Consulting firm, spoke with them. They're a large firm down in Bridgeport and work in multiple states. They said that several things. One is that they were busy, their schedule didn't allow them to look at it right now. And he talked about all the different things that would go into doing this study, but he actually called some of the appraisers that they would have used to work on this, and was not able to find someone. And so then his next recommendation to me was the Connecticut chapter of Appraisals Institute, to talk to them to see if they might have some recommendations, or see if anyone else had done a study like this. So it hasn't been easy trying to find somebody to do an analysis like this. So I'm actually kind of thrilled that we have somebody who feels that they can lend a professional opinion on our situation, regardless of what that opinion may be. So that's a little background.
Alan?
Well, I'd like to fess up to be the person who, both in long-range planning and in this board, requested this study. But I've had a change of heart since it's come with a $17,000 price tag, and also with the concept of it being one that might yield no firm response. And furthermore, I've been thinking about what Greg said about bedrooms and these other things we're all familiar with talking about when we appraise a house. And it's something that reminded me that we're talking about apples and oranges here, because I don't know about you, but whenever I bought a house, magically the house is appraised at just what I decided to pay for it. So that we're talking about a different thing when we're talking about appraisal. Well, the house is always appraised at the sales price that the buyer and the seller have agreed upon, at least as far as the way residential appraisals go with what the value of the house is. In other words, the value of the house is set by the market. It's set by what someone's willing to pay for it. With that in mind, I feel that I went through all of this list. I think we've all gotten these, and they're available on the website. And I added a couple more. I can distribute this too. I poured over all of these articles as far as the resale value. And I don't feel that they are as disparate as Pat and Jonathan have said they are. I don't think Jonathan said it. Jonathan is quoted as saying, the median price of a home in Bridgewater and the other two communities in Region 12 are among the highest in Connecticut and the nation. Are they going to say that closing an elementary school, even though those children will have another excellent school to go to, will tank those other things? Well, what's interesting is that all of these articles, and some of them refer to each other, they're studies based on assessing and reassessing previous studies. So if you look at them, you're going to find that there are a lot of academic studies in here which are very cognizant of each other and building upon what either trends that have changed or flaws, or expanding and broadening the details and the scopes of the studies. There are some in here which are kind of like just blog articles. They're just kind of real 10,000-foot overviews of things, which still all seem to have their own merit. But what I've discovered is that they do say that consolidating schools does immediately drop property values, and then over time, as the population changes, they go up. in general. However, and in one of these, I cut this out of one of these. However, in high-income areas, you can see the difference. This is the value after consolidation. Consolidation happens right here, dips down, then it comes back up. But in high-value areas, it goes down because in high-value areas, the tenor of the community is different. We have different things that we think about and care about than just the costs and just the consolidation. They often say that there is a difference between a rural school and a more of a populous suburban or urban school, that distances are more important, that community is more important, and these things are reflected in what people are willing to pay somewhere. One of the studies that's quoted in here actually breaks it down to feet and miles. So the discrepancies that I found are not that some people say property value is going to go down and some people say they're going to go up. What I found is very, very across the board is that in high value tracts, as they call them, which is where we are, which is what Jonathan's referring to in his rather glib comment of, these are the most, the highest in Connecticut in the nation. This is a place where there are so many other factors other than just the cost savings involved in consolidation. So from what I understand is if we all look at these studies, they're going to show us that there is, and some of the warnings in these are kind of amazing too, that the state shouldn't get involved and do this. It always should be up to the local communities. For the smallest rural communities, the presence of a school is associated with appreciably higher housing values compared to similar communities without a school. I mean, these kind of things are, as I said, it seems to be from the number of peer-reviewed academic articles, something that goes into studying how communities and how buyers feel about their home purchases, as opposed to how we would appraise things in a strictly, square foot bedroom distance from the fire hydrant way. And so for that, I feel that if we all took these and found more, because they all link to more, so they all have sources, so we could all do this for forever, but we could do it for free, and we might want to do this forever. I think this is going to show us more of a sense of. They also don't get me wrong. They talk about a lot of the positive aspects of consolidation as well, but it's very balanced, and it's things for us all to consider as board members, as parents, as voters. And I think that's a more valuable use of our time, and I don't think that this study would be, even though I'm the one who demanded it, would be a valuable use of our $17,000.
Kelly?
Just a quick factual question first. Is this study supposed to be presented before a decision is made at the end of June?
Yes.
Tell me how someone can manage to do $7,000 to $17,000 for the billable hours in that amount of time. That's a lot of money for this kind of study. I can't believe that 3 weeks of work would really entail that many man hours, first. Second, I'm familiar with Lower Fairfield County, where there's a community called Rowayton. It is adjacent to Darien. It's separated by a lovely river and a bridge. They're both on the Sound. Rowayton prices are substantially lower than Darien prices for real estate. Those two little sections look nearly identical in terms of their housing stock, the number of bedrooms, the kind of houses, the beautiful physical location, the amenities, except that the Rowayton families must attend Norwalk schools, and the Darien students, of course, attend Darien schools. There's a major difference in the property values. And if Wilton, a section of Wilton, were told, you're now going to Bethel or Norwalk or Waterbury, the prices of that, the value of those properties would drop. I mean, we're not talking just about the presence of a school, but also the quality of the school. And the two are intertwined. But just simply not having a school, not having control over your own school, not having it as part of your community. I mean, people in my town are talking a lot about this problem. And they're anticipating that if there's a big consolidation, they may want to sell their real estate ahead of that. They're afraid of the lowering prices. It might put them underwater and unable to When Mr. Costa says something like, you know, these are the highest, among the highest in the nation, I'm reminded that some people viscerally object to high real prices, and they don't care if our prices go down. But the families in our communities who live there do. They care about the quality of life, they care about their investments, and I mean, this matters to people. So I'm going to ask all of you who aren't in Roxbury or Bridgewater to do what we've often been urged to do, which is think as a region and understand the impact that what you're asking us to do would have to our towns. Washington would end up with pre-K through high school and a business sector that gives it many, many wonderful tax receipts in New Preston, Washington Depot, and Washington. Unless you'd like to share those tax receipts with us, which maybe is a fair thing to discuss, we receive our tax receipts from real estate, from transactions, from additions. That's the major source of the town tax income. And anything that disturbs that can really affect our towns. You know, we don't have the cushion, we don't have the business issue. There's a win here for Washington to consolidate up in Washington. I understand.
Kelly, I'm sorry. We're not deciding the issue of consolidation tonight. The issue
No,
is, are we
we're not.
going to hire this firm to
Yes,
study the real
yes,
estate?
I know.
The impact on real
Well,
estate.
let me get back to the
Are you
point
saying
then.
you would like the
Thank you.
study or not like the study?
I think that some of this is, it doesn't cost $17,000 to study.
He said between 7 and 17.
It doesn't cost $7 to study this probably. We have a completely new problem. There are no other places we know in elementary schools. What will that do? Will it turn us into the villages, like the retirement community in Florida? No, what effect will that have? These are qualitative effects, not something that needs to be assessed by a person who's used to counting up bedrooms and, you know, square footage. These are qualitative effects that we're talking about that affect the perception. Whether a family wants to move to a town that doesn't have a school in itself. So I would not support that kind of funding for this.
Well, I must say, they're exactly the questions that you just raised that we don't know the answers to, is why I'm supporting this. If there was a motion made, there's been charges that, you know, we're hiding information or that there's improper information or whatever. It's just, if we spend the money and it comes back and there's no good answer, at least we've gone out, we've studied it, it's something we can put out to the people, everybody can read it. So, I'm sorry, Susan?
Can we have more specific information about the data pool from which this firm would draw? I mean, what exactly will they be studying? Will they be, for example, looking outside of Connecticut? Is this a longitudinal look over the change of real estate over time? To Alan's point, someone's going to pay, real estate may be valued at whatever someone is willing to pay. The fear is no one would want to move to a town without a school within its borders, so then you get a different purchaser who may not want to
I
maintain
suspect,
certain values.
well, to answer your question, I suspect what they're going to do is I would suspect what they will do is they will try to construct, they will do surveys, they will attempt to locate information, they will try to look at towns that have lost schools. They may go outside of Connecticut. I mean, they have people that are, I mean, they do things in New York and Connecticut. I don't know what other states they may do it in, but I know that Mr. Karen is admitted in both New York. He's an MII appraiser. He's got appraisals in both New York and Connecticut. I don't know what other methodologies they might employ, but what I do know is that there's a lot of issues that have to be looked at. For example, if it were me, I would want to know whether or not people are bypassing the town because of the schools that are here. But that's not what he's studying. But I don't think that's what he's studying. But I'm telling you that it's easy to say, I don't want to live in a town that doesn't have a school. But the thing you have to understand is, when you look at the towns, you could probably fit Bridgewater and Roxbury into about half a dozen or more. If you took them together and crunched them together, you could fit them into half a dozen or more towns in the state. I think the 3 towns in this region are just about the same size as the town of New Milford, which is the largest town in the state of Connecticut from an area perspective. I think you could fit all 3 of them into New Milford. You see, when you talk about elementary schools in the town, it's great that you cited Darien, actually, because Darien is actually a town without a town center. It has 3. I know this because I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission in Darien. And I know Rowayton very well, because Rowayton is part of the city of Norwalk, and the reason why people pay, although Rowayton is probably the priciest district in Norwalk, the reason they might pay a little less than Darien is because they go to the Norwalk high schools, whereas the Darien kids go to the Darien high school. But you could say the same thing of Fairfield versus Bridgeport, Roxbury versus Waterbury. Anytime you have 2 municipalities next to each other, where one is a city, I mean, let's face it, this state is economically segregated, and that's the way it is. And so people are going to pay, depending on what they consider to be a value judgment, as to the quality of the schools. Now, you didn't mention the town of Fairfield, where until recently they had 2 different high schools. And do people move to different areas of the town? I don't know. Norwalk had 2 different high schools for a while. Bridgeport had 2. A lot of them don't anymore because their populations are dropping. But I'm saying that some schools, some towns have different schools, different arrangements. You can sort of look into that. But the bottom line is, does not having a school within the 4 corners of a town impact the value of the properties in that town, where there's another school that is just about the same distance away as schools are from residents in many towns? I mean, the town of Greenwich has a lot of elementary schools. I don't think anyone's worried about whether or not people's property values would drop if they closed or consolidated a few of them, because they've done that. And I think all over the state they're closing and consolidating schools. The question might be as simple as, do you have a school that the kids can go to that's a reasonable distance from where they live, that's of a high quality? It could be that the higher quality is better than having them right near where people can walk to them. I don't know. But what they're going to do, you've asked what they're going to study. I think they're going to study what has happened if a school is closed. Has it had an impact in value? And they're going to study it statistically. And the thing that troubles me is that if we want to know the answer to this question, we seem to be offering a choice between taking a bunch of studies that were not geared toward our particular region or our particular state, and they may have valuable information in them, but we're going to look through a glass darkly at these studies, or do we want someone to actually come in and actually study it here on the ground based on what we've got and based on the type of housing we have? I think if you say, I'd rather have this than than our own study, I think what you're saying is I'd really rather not know specifically what's going on here. I'd really like to know generally what's going on when this happens.
Emily?
I feel a couple things. I feel it's an extremely important study because I have been repeatedly told by my group that it is an extremely important study. Non-negotiable, extremely important. On many, many Monday nights and Wednesdays and the occasional Tuesday have I spent listening to people say it's a very important study, and I took that to heart and I wholeheartely agree. It's a very important study. I am willing to bring it back to the long-range plan, who did say repeatedly it's a very important study, to see whether we still feel like that. There was just 2 articles in a newspaper that said they were very worried about it. I don't think we can now just say we're not worried about it anymore. I personally would like to know the impact, regardless of which way it goes. Regardless, we might not get an actual tangible answer. We've got to try something. We spent money on plans that aren't even on the board as actual options, like they're options, but they're not to a vote, they're not a referendum. We spent almost double the amount on draw-ups of plans that haven't even gotten there. So I feel it's very important. I think we should do some research, and I think we should tell the people exactly what we're hoping they can do for us. And if they can't help us, don't pay them. But if they think they can give us something, they need to make a presentation to this board and the long-range plan, tell us what they think they can do for us. We've been told repeatedly it's important.
Larry?
I think we could spend several more hours discussing this, but as Emily said, and Jim, this is a question that does not have an answer yet. It's our responsibility to do diligence and try to get the best possible answer to the question which is out there. And people are not going to let go. They're going to, no, look, you're not doing anything. Even if we don't get a definitive answer, is it yes or no? If the answer is just, we've done the best we can, we don't know. At least we as a board have done our duty.
Okay. Well, there's no, Michelle.
I'd like to move that we approve funds not to exceed $17,000 to retain a real estate consultant for the purpose of researching how the long-range planning options impact real estate values.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded by Laird. Is there any further discussion? Kelly?
I'm really unhappy that we are only now doing this, when this has been a key item brought up at every single long-term planning committee meeting, and every single person who has been involved in this process knows that, what is it, 2-3 years now this has gone on, this process? This has been a key question. This has been a key question before this present process even began. And the old consolidation schemes, this was a key question. So why are we, again, kind of quickly, off the top of our head, no professional presentation by this firm, tell us what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, who they're going to evaluate, no competitive bids for the jobs, just stick it in here, do it in 2 or 3 weeks, and we're supposed to be okay with it. I think it's unprofessional. I think we should, this is a very big topic for our towns. Either we do it right, or, I mean, I just don't think we can count on the results of something like this telescoped into a 2 or 3 week time period. I'd rather somebody study it. We have a presentation, they tell us what they're going to do, we approve or yea or nay, and then we see it in the fall. And I know this pushes back the ideal timetable that someone has in their head, but I think we need to really take this into consideration. This is a very key element of how we're going forward. And the citizens of these towns are not going to be happy without really being comfortable with this kind of a topic before they go to referendum, which means that we could go to referendum and waste a lot of money doing so.
Susan?
Well, I agree that it's extremely important. Those parameters that have been laid out are so very extremely vague. Any research that does not have solid data going into it will have results that would be absolutely discredited. We need solid information, but if we don't, you know, what's this? They may go outside Connecticut. You know, we need to know where the data would be drawn from to even have faith that the answer, the question we're asking is going to be answered. I have no faith in that right now. And especially for the expense, given a short timeline, you know, it's stuffing it to the finish line.
Alan?
Yeah, I would like to see a presentation to find out what they're going to do. Because what concerns me is the expense and the fact that appraisers usually do what they're told. They find a number. They find the number for you.
We're not looking for numbers here.
Well, no, that's what I mean. They appraisers,
Can I answer that?
you know.
Can I answer that? Because I actually know the answer to that question. The reason why that is because, as you've said, when two people bargain, the definition of value, of fair market value, is what a willing buyer will pay a willing seller when both or neither is under compulsion to sell and both are appraised of reasonable amounts of information. That's what the definition of fair market value is. I know it. I've read it 1,000 times. But what I'm telling you is, when you bargain for the price of a house, the appraiser those appraisals do not always come in right on the price. Sometimes they come in low, sometimes they come in high. But bear in mind, you didn't bid that price until your broker was pretty convinced that they had comped it out and that was the range of values that the property would come in at, or they wouldn't waste their time making that deal, because it wouldn't happen. And that's what happens. So as a result, you're usually in the ballpark. And if it comes in right, it's because it was within the ballpark of what it is. It might be a tolerance of a few thousand on either side, and you're in there. It's not because they're paid. And believe me, they may have done that in the past, but after the last 2 real estate recessions, a lot of appraisers lost their business as a result of crappy appraisals, and it doesn't happen. This is not an appraisal. This is a study by a firm with experience and expertise in valuation and in trying to determine the factors that affect valuation. It is not an appraisal. It's a study, and that's a different ball of wax. So anyway, that's what it is.
Sure.
I just wanted to say that they did give us a proposal, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it. I thought Dr. Costantino might have it, but I think that I was going to say exactly what Greg said, that it was clear that this was a study, not an appraisal of a certain property, and that the parameters were laid out in this proposal. And I think that it would be trying to think of the timing of the board meeting, because the questions that the firm was prepared to answer were a market analysis of the region, looking at all of the variables, and the school arrangements that were in the long-range plan. So that it was the parameters coming out of the long-range plan that they said that they would look at. And if we're not comfortable with that, or we want to add parameters to that, I don't see a reason the board could not weigh in on the task that they were given. And I'm sorry I don't have it in front of me tonight.
Emily?
And being on the status quo, I almost would like to see if they could put in our current configuration into their studies as well, because the status quo, to keep everything that it is an option. So could they get an idea of what, right now, the thought is on people looking at our schools in town? I think that's valuable. I think it's ridiculous to not take it into consideration, to be honest. And I'm just so confused by Alan, I honestly am confused by it being your idea and now you not wanting it. But I still have been told multiple times that people want it, so.
Rick?
I just want to make sure you understand. I was hoping that Michelle would find other firms that would be able to service. We weren't finding, and this firm I know about because I've used this firm before to do valuation work, and I have faced them down before in appraisals where they've been on the other side on mass appraisals of municipalities. So I know the firm's capabilities. I'm aware of it. I want to make sure you know that. I don't have any financial or personal tie to this firm, but at least I know they're competent and they have the expertise. If you can find another one, go with another one. It doesn't have to be this one. I would find a different firm. I don't think it matters what firm. Just find a firm with this bracket of capabilities, that they do these kind of studies and they're not just doing appraisals, because appraisals is not enough. That's all.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a little uncomfortable with that, Greg, just find a firm. I think the board's going to vote on this one way or the other. We should have a firm name, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Well, what is the name of the firm that you
We should know
propose?
what they're doing.
I'm just like Karen Fazio. Karen and Fazio. They're from Fairfield, Connecticut.
Karen, K.
Karen, K-E-R-I-N, and Fazio. That was the one firm that we've talked, I mean, Michelle talked to several. This is the one firm that was giving us a proposal.
And if this passes, this motion, I don't know if it will, but if it does, you're not going to contact them. This will leave this to the superintendent.
I don't want any further contact with them on this matter. That's fine.
Susan?
And
This proposal included a study or encompassed a study of this particular area and what they think the appraisal, the real estate value would be given a change? Is that?
I understand.
Because that's not what I would be looking for. I would be looking for
No.
a longitudinal study of the effect of real estate value in a town that is similar to ours, perhaps in Vermont, if that's the only other state, and to determine, and compare apples to apples. We don't want to guess and roll the dice or have someone look into a crystal ball. We want to know, in a town that is similar to ours, what has been the long-term effect on a town not having a school.
That's what I
Rubber
assume.
meets the road.
I don't know. I think what was asked for was for them to do a study to determine what the impact would be for closing school in a town. I think that was the idea. If you took your school
But that's not
and
looking
closed
at
your
our
school.
town and this area and.
Well, I think it has to. I think it has to
tell
be.
us what you
I
think.
think it has to be informed by what the towns are that are involved here, and it has to be informed by the same set of circumstances. When you have the towns of this rough demographic distribution, what happens when you close a school in one of them and regionalize it? I think that's what you're looking for. Isn't that the question we're trying to answer?
We are asking two very different questions, which is disconcerting because we would be, I would be looking for a particular answer that is fundamentally different than what you are looking for. So
Well,
perhaps the proposal itself, the parameters of what it is that we're looking for need to be.
I think it's my understanding that the job of this report would be to give
let's
us,
just see the
hold on,
proposal.
please. Would be the impact, if any, on the closing of the 3 elementary schools in these 3 towns. And wherever they get that information from, if they go to Vermont, however they draw it, people may not think it's valid or whatever, but the question is, what is the impact on these 3 towns of the closing of their elementary schools? That's the question.
But not looking at these three towns and what the impact would be absent any look outside of this.
I don't know where they'd get it. I don't know how they would do it.
But your firm only operates in New York and Connecticut.
Well, I mean, it doesn't mean that they're not capable of studying valuation from other areas.
But are they
the po-
qualified?
But the point, well, I don't know. I mean, I think they are. I mean, they're qualified to study things and understand them. But the question, I guess, is, if there's a disagreement as to what, if the question that's being asked is not the right question, then we're not going to get the right answer. And I think we have to have the right question to get the right answer. And what
We
I
have to
understood
agree on
the
what that
question to
question
be,
is.
what I understood.
Well, hold on, Greg, I'm sorry.
what
The
I-
motion is the purpose of researching how the long-range planning options impact real estate values in these three towns. I mean, that's it.
Well, that's the
Right,
general
all of the
purpose, I thought, and maybe I'm wrong, and I'm happy to be told that I'm wrong, but I thought originally, I don't know what the question is now, but I thought originally the concern was that there were two concerns. Number one, that we did not know what the impact would be. That it was postulated by some people, they happen to be from Bridgewater, that if the school in their town was closed, that their property values would be diminished as a result. So the question to the consultant is, if under these circumstances where you have three towns that comprise a region, and they each have an elementary school, and you close the elementary schools in favor of one elementary school servicing the region in one of the three towns, what impact does that have on valuation? Can you measure that impact? What impact does that have on valuation? Will it cause values to drop, or will it cause values to increase, or will it have any effect? That's the question that they're going to try to answer. Now, if there's a different question that we want to know the answer to.
There isn't one other question. The other question is, what's the impact of having a consolidated state-of-the-art school in a region? There's
Well,
two.
I don't know if that was asked, but.
But that's when I speak to them, if you approve, that's what it has to be. It has to be, what's the impact of real estate on all the possible options as best as they can give us that information? That's the question.
That's the motion.
That's the motion, that's the question, that's my intent. Because it's not just, we have to hit every group.
Including status quo.
Including status quo. So that's as best as we can get. That's what I'm asking for.
All right, Kelly?
I think this discussion is ridiculous and unprofessional. Why isn't this firm here? And if we're doing a study that is this critical to the future of the citizens of our region, perhaps we should have two firms so we can have alternate opinions. Or maybe they'll reach the same opinion and we can have better reassurance that it's the correct opinion. But why isn't this firm that's being put forth, or the firms that have been suggested, here to answer our questions? Mr. Cava is trying to sit in for them. I feel it's unprofessional if we're going to hire a firm for up to $17,000 on an issue critical to our region. Why aren't they here? Our architects appear here, other consultants that want an opportunity to work with us appear here. These questions that we're asking are all good questions, but the firm that we hire should be vetted by the Board of Education so that our citizens can have confidence that they were vetted, that it was a prudent choice. Why aren't they here? Who is trying to shoehorn one of the most important questions in this region in terms of the future program into a couple of week period with consultants that maybe they'll do it, they don't have a lot of experience, we're not sure. Why don't we have a real professional process here? Why aren't they here? Dr. Costantino, why aren't they here, these people? I mean, Jim, why aren't these people here today?
Well, we asked them to be here. I don't think anyone asked them to be here.
It's
probably
important
why they're
enough
not
that
here.
we should have.
Well, maybe it is.
Well, this was
Maybe it
the
is.
issue. But I'll tell you why they were not here. Because it was brought to my attention, and then we spoke about it, and then the person who brought it to my attention said, never mind. So
3
that's
years
why
ago.
they're, no,
This
this is not
subject
3
came up.
years. I'm not talking.
Hold on, stop.
So I said, I am not gonna make that decision. So I brought it to the table. That's why they're not here.
But wait,
Alan?
but that's, you can't have it both ways. I told you
What?
never mind, so why is it on the agenda? If it's on the agenda, they should be here. You can't have it both
No, but-
ways. You can't say, I said never mind, so you decided not to have them show up, but we're gonna have it on the agenda anyway. Pick
No,
one.
you know what? I put them on the agenda and I told you because I do not feel, once it was brought to my attention, that I should say no. Listen, you don't have to vote for this.
I know.
And the other piece of this is, and this is something that the board can decide or not, because you are right, I am pushing this board to make a decision by the end of June. That is probably one of the most correct things you have said this evening. The real estate report does not have to be here because the citizens, the taxpayers, are not voting until the fall, okay? And if you have been on these committees for the last months and have sat with people, the real estate piece is such a small piece to the conversation.
No, it's not.
Oh, it absolutely is, that we have had, and feel free to leave as groups.
Can we call the
Okay?
question?
And so, if you want to do it, you do it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. Okay? But do not fault me for not having people here when you never even discussed it before.
All right, the question.
I would like to call the question.
All right, is a motion, is there a second to call the question?
No second? I second it.
Is there a second to the motion to call the question?
Jeez.
No second to the motion? All right, is there anything else? Mike?
I just want to address one point rather than revisiting everything. Emily, you had a question before about why we might not, are we concerned about this question? Do we want information or do we want to block information? I don't know if there's a single person on the board who doesn't want information. I want information. However, I have concerns about the cost. I have concerns about getting information in time that's quality information. And I do agree with Kelly that it would be nice, at the very least, if not required, to have the firm that's going to do the study here to answer some questions for us, some basic questions. I
do
think
not
those three
disagree.
things would be great.
Okay. Emily?
I do not disagree at all. I completely agree with you, but an article was in the newspaper on Sunday. Today is Monday. So the tone that has changed in less than 24 hours almost to me confuses me. And I don't want to take it off the table when we've been repeatedly told it's important. I completely agree. We need a presentation. We need someone to come and tell us they can do the job we need them to do. We need to clarify what we are actually asking them, and we need to discuss it possibly a lot more in depth, apparently. If between yesterday and today has changed people's opinions of the questions, this needs to be dealt with. But I feel at the end of the day, it is an important issue that will not go away. It's not going to go away. It hasn't gone away in 6 years. It's not going to go away. I feel we need to look at it. I'm okay with pushing it. I would love a presentation. But I think the picture is getting skewed here, and that is confusing and, for me personally, a little bit frustrating.
Greg?
Look,
Greg, is there anything to add?
There is something to add, and I think it's an important point here, which is, look, there are some people that want to do this study, there are some people that have their doubts about it, but the reason the study came about is more than a little time ago, this issue was tossed on the table by people who felt their property values were going to be negatively impacted if their schools were closed. And as I said, these people were from Bridgewater. I didn't hear this concern raised by someone from Roxbury or anyone from Washington for that matter, but I heard it raised by people from Bridgewater. I also heard raised the other night when a bunch of people presented a letter and left a meeting that they felt that there was insufficient money was being put to the cost of studying things other than consolidation options. And there was a criticism leveled on the board that they weren't studying other aspects of it. Well, I admit that this is part of a consolidation question, I think, because it's premised on the concept of consolidation. But it is at least making an effort to answer questions that were raised, that people said, whereas Emily has pointed out, were important questions that were raised. And so I didn't want to go into a decision by this board if we had not considered what some people felt was a very important issue from them. And I wanted to have it studied. And I think that there was my understanding is, Michelle, you were trying to get this looked at months ago, a couple of months ago, and for some reason it seemed to have dropped and didn't get done. And perhaps, I don't know who was responsible, but it didn't get done. And then I think the question came up, and I think you pressed it. And I suggested to you a firm name, you suggested to me a firm, and I thought that firm didn't have the capability. And when you asked them, it turned out, no, indeed, they didn't have that capability in-house. So we were trying to find people, and it couldn't be done. We're not trying to push this issue in order to inconvenience someone or be unprofessional. We're trying to get it bloody well done before the board has to make a decision. And that's what we're trying to do. That's the rush. The rush is to try to get them going so a proper study can be done. As to the number of hours that are involved in it, I suspect, like a lot of things, when you're trying to do something that's never been done before, you may have to spend a lot of hours on it in order to research it, because it may require going very far afield to get the answers. But I think, to their credit, they attempted to do it. And I think if we're going to do it, we should do it. What we should not do is vote and say, I don't want to do this study, and then later say, but there's this issue that wasn't studied. I think once you vote against this, you are permanently barred from opening your mouth, at least in the court of public decency, and saying, we should have studied it. But I voted against it, but we should have studied it. Well, good, fine, you can take that position, but it's going to make you look silly. So I think if you vote against this, you vote for not doing it. I think you should stop talking about it and stop saying that this is a concern or an issue. Either vote to study it or don't study it. But whatever you do, don't complain when we don't study it if you voted against studying it. That's my
Susan.
I think we need more specific parameters as to what is being studied. I think the question, as stated, is not going to meet the goal. I didn't know that there was a proposal floating out there somewhere. I'm very interested in knowing what the specifics are. I think the specific questions that we are asking anyone to look into should be defined by the board, and just more transparency for this particular process if this is going to have any credibility.
Okay.
I think if I vote against this proposal, Mr. Kava, I will still have a lot to say about it, because this is way overdue, and we may need more than one study. What I reject is the superintendent's timeline, because this is a critical issue, and because she wants the board to make a decision on a certain date, if we do not have the information needed to make decisions, if we don't have the qualitative information and the quantitative information available to us that has been done by people we have selected, we know what they're doing in a professional process, so we can have confidence, our citizens can have confidence, then it's simply a waste of time and money. It seems like it's a little knee-jerk try to get this in at the last minute so you can say if people vote against it, they can't bring it up again. I think the timeline needs to move, obviously, from this issue. The timeline needs to move, that no decisions can be made by the end of June or the middle of June. And that the referendum needs to move perhaps as well. That is not written in stone that because you decided you want a referendum in the fall, that it should be in the fall. Maybe it needs to be a month later in the fall. We need one more month to discuss this critical issue in a professional, deliberative manner.
Kelly, the board will decide all those things. Nothing's going to happen without a board vote on all that. It's not the superintendent's decision. Is there anything else? There's a motion. Alan?
I just want to explain the reason that I changed my mind is because I did my wildest dreams imagine it's going to cost $17,000. And then, at this point in this meeting, if I vote against it, it's because I don't know what they're doing. We will have a lot of conjecture. Well, I think they're going to do this, I think they're going to do that. I would like to know what they're going to do. And part of the reason why I changed my mind is because I determined through reading a lot of this stuff that it may not be possible. And that's even what you said, is it may not even be possible to have a definitive response. So I would like to hear from them what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and what their estimate of odds are that they're going to be able to do what they say they're going to do.
I don't think they're
when they tell me what they're going to do.
All right. Is there anything else? All right, there's a motion on the table to consider and if appropriate approve funds not to exceed $17,000 to retain Karen and Fazio for the purpose of researching how the long-range planning options impact real estate values. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Got it.
All those opposed, raise your hand.
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry?
I don't think he voted, he needs to vote.
Any abstained? Raise your hand.
Sorry. Do it again.
No, I don't
People
understand.
mixed up.
Can you read, I
There's a
was
motion.
still focusing on what you said as the motion, and I'm still thinking about that.
I'm reading the motion from the
Read it
table. The
again.
only thing I added was the Fern name.
Can,
To approve funds not to exceed $17,000 to retain Karen, the firm of Karen and Fazio for the purpose of researching how the long-range planning options impact real estate values. That's the motion.
Jim, did the original motion have including status quo?
In-
One of them.
How the long-range
Well, the
planning
long-range
options, that's,
planning
and that's
But
what
that-
the
well,
options.
that
It's
wasn't-
all the options.
but that wasn't added.
I'm not sure that's what the superintendent said. See, the thing I'm trying to think through is I'm trying to listen to this and understand what it is that the superintendent said, and it may not be entirely consistent with the way you phrased that motion.
The motion is on the agenda. That's what was moved by Michelle and seconded. That's what I'm reading. That's
Yeah,
the
but I heard
motion.
something different in the discussion.
How the options, I guess all options.
The
It's the
options, yeah.
long-range planning options, so
That's
it's
one of the
all the
options.
options.
Well,
So we'll have to,
But those are proposals.
Status quo, everything.
Hold on a second.
Do we need to,
Does their
If it-
proposal actually cover that?
that was.
do we need to revote? Has everybody voted on this?
No, I haven't voted. What, I thought, first of all, I have a question, because that is, are we done with looking at any other consultants? Because
The motion, Greg, is Karen and Fazio.
I understand that, but that's not what this motion says.
Yes, it is.
These are just added.
It says a consultant, it doesn't say that, and I know Michelle was looking at
A
consultants. Are we done
consultant.
looking at
I
consultants?
haven't found anybody yet who can give me another proposal. I can continue looking, but at this point, we found somebody who could do it.
And if the superintendent can't get them to answer the questions that the superintendent has, if they say we can't really research, which the second thing you've asked for, whatever the case
Well,
may be?
This is what I said to the chairperson, Chairman, that if this passes, what I will do is I will email the proposal to the board, ask you for your input, and then make sure that they are doing what we need them to do. But in my mind, it is the impact of all of the options on the real estate values. It's we can't just get the impact of closing a school. We have to have the other side of the coin too. What's the impact of building a consolidated school? So it's the impact of all of the options. And how they do that, I don't know. That's their job. That's not my job. That's my piece. So that's what that says. When I says research how the long-range planning options impact real estate values, that includes status quo, it includes keeping Burnham open and having a consolidated school, it includes having one consolidated school. Those are really the options. There's three. The other ones are all configurations of those main options that would impact real estate values.
I'm not going to open this up for discussion further. Do you have something about the vote, Tony?
Well, I think it's an important question. My problem for voting against it is I don't know what these people are going to do and whether they're going to tell us. We couldn't possibly give you an answer to that. And I'd like to know what their thoughts are before I decide to spend money on it.
That's my problem.
Other than that, I think the question is important and one worth looking at, but I don't know what they're going to do, and that's my
I know
problem.
you're not here,
And I
but
want this to be
next Tuesday, we have a long-range planning at 6 o'clock. I could maybe try to get the firm in at 5 o'clock for a special board meeting. I could do that. I know you're not here, but we could have someone else if you wanted to do that.
Well,
I could move it to June 3rd. I could do it to June 3rd, and we can do it at 5 o'clock on June 3rd.
no, that's not going to happen. I think unfortunately, the clock is running here and we've run out of
I mean, we could do something this week.
time. No.
I could do something Wednesday night, if you want to see if we can get them to come Wednesday night.
I reject the premise of the clock. The clock is running. I reject the premise that we have a
All
clock
right.
on this issue.
I'm sorry, I didn't
All right.
understand.
There's a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded. I want to take a vote on the motion. But somebody didn't vote because they were
Let's not do it
confused.
again.
We can't redo the vote, can we?
Sure you can, people didn't vote. They
I just
decided.
need to know how to do it.
I'm sorry?
I just need to know how
All
to
right,
do it.
everybody's voted but Greg. Greg, motion,
I vote aye.
You can lead
What did I
horse to
vote?
water,
Because I don't know voting either.
All right, so you,
Oh.
Well, then if you don't vote, you lose. You gotta vote one way or the other.
Yeah, you gotta vote.
Yeah, I don't know that that's, can you really retake
what's
a
the,
vote?
what's the vote without Mr. Kava?
5-5, it's tied. This should go away.
Five, five, five.
So he waits until the end?
No, I was
That's
trying to-
Snell.
When you see us all with our hands up, it means it's voting time.
No.
I apologize, I really had the same question Tony had, because I'm fundamentally for the consultant, but I would
You
like them
voted
to.
for it.
I didn't
5-5,
vote.
it's
I did not
defeated,
vote.
and it's
There's
simple.
no 5-5.
Wait,
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 wait.
wait.
She did vote. One.
That's why I said, what did I vote? Because I, in my
Emily,
mind,
you
did not
voted
vote.
yes.
4.
Your hand is up for yes.
Okay, and my vote was for yes.
What was the vote?
It was 5-5.
I was having a
Do you want
problem.
me to read off who voted?
Uh,
4.
Okay, hold on, please. Yes. Would you
Okay,
vote?
voting yes, I had Michelle, Jim, Blair, Franny, and Emily. Voting no, Susan, Kelly, Alan, Tony, and Mike.
All right. Well, I think, and did you have any abstentions?
We didn't get that far.
Because that's where I was hemming and hawing.
We didn't finish.
All right,
We didn't finish that.
I didn't vote, all right?
okay.
You missed it.
So that's the
You
end.
don't
The
miss
vote
it.
is not
You
closed.
don't miss it. You have to have everyone cast a vote. I didn't vote. I didn't understand the question, all right? I didn't vote.
Not qualified.
Would you put it down? That's enough from you and any member of the public. This is not your meeting, it's our meeting.
It's a circus.
Please keep your mouth quiet during our meeting, or I'd ask you to leave.
Amen.
Mr. Kava, are you prepared to vote?
I am prepared to vote. I'm prepared to vote aye on the question, in favor of it.
All right.
Thank you.
What is the
6
result?
yes.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Are there any abstentions? None. All right. What is the result of the vote?
It sounded
6
like
in
Emily was
favor.
gonna change
She
No,
said
if
that-
I had my hand up, I had my hand up. It is what it is, but I would like us to go into it thinking that we would like a proposal. I would deeply like that.
I'm sorry, I thought the clerk read that you voted yes. Did you vote?
I was having trouble,
Then she said she would have
so
abstained.
if she counted me as yes, then it was. I don't know what to say. I can't, I don't know what I did. I'm confused.
You know, I really think that under these circumstances, a revote should be done, because there's confusion as to what the vote was. Everybody can vote freely how they wish to vote. So on the motion that's on the table, to approve funds not to exceed $17,000 to retain the firm of Karen and Fazio for the purpose of researching how the long-range planning options impact real estate values. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, raise your hand. And you abstain. Raise your hand. Can you tell us the result of the vote?
6 yes, 5 no, no abstentions.
All right, the motion passes. All right, item 7, we'll move to the end if anybody wants to do a tour of Chicago. Opportunity for the public to comment on agenda items. Is there anyone who wants to address us? Yes, sir. Would you state your name and where you're from?
Tom Seeger from Bridgewater. I'll have to say that I agree with Kelly. This whole thing is brought in at the 11th hour. This was asked for a long time ago. You're not going to get qualified results, and I think that you're wasting money. And I think it's absurd, and I just wanted to say that. Furthermore, Greg, you said you wanted to be pointed out if you're wrong. Resource number 15, you were definitely wrong about. And now you're bringing in this other Amato guy. I don't know who he is, but what you stated in resource 15, and you stated in front of everybody of the long-range group, was that there was going to be a $23 million savings in the first 10 years on staffing. That's not happening. You misled the people. It was in the newspapers. So you were wrong.
All right, anyone else?
I have to respond to that, Jim, because when someone stands up and accuses me, first of all, you're wrong, and I'll tell you why you're wrong. Just let me finish. Let me tell you. What I
Read the
said.
resource.
May I look at the resource and look at what the resource says?
What
It
did
says.
it say in the paper?
Hold on.
It says that over 10 years, you are going to have this amount in a 3-school configuration, this amount in a 2-school configuration, and this is amount in a 1-school configuration. It was done before we had any data as to when the buildings could be commenced under construction. We had no construction cost information because those reports hadn't come in, the consultants hadn't even been hired, or if they'd been hired, they hadn't reported. All we had was the staffing, and if you look at that thing, it simply takes Resource 10 and Resource 11 and combines them. One resource says this is how much staff is going to cost based on inflation assumptions over 10 years for each of these options. The other resource says this is how many staff members we're going to need for elementary school. What it says, all the resource says, and the reason why we need to do further work is all it says is that the cost of operating this district under the present configuration's elementary program over 10 years, based on the information we have as to demographics, is going to be, under the 1-school configuration, it's going to cost $23.5 million less than it does under the present configuration. Under the 2-school option, where we keep Bridgewater open and have a consolidated school for Washington and Bridgewater, over a 10-year period, it would cost $11 million less. That's all it does. It compares this and says, if you were operating this region with this configuration, these are the differences. Does that tell you how much money will be saved if the region operates this? No, because it's not enough information to compute that. You have to know the cost of building, you have to know what building options you're going to use, you have to know when you're going to bond them, what your cost of bonding interest is, you need to know what the cost of running the middle high school is. There's a whole raft of information before you get there, and that's the ongoing project. Now,
The problem is, you stated there was a $23 million savings. It started in 2012.
All right, that's enough. You're done. Is there anyone else who wants to address this? Yes, sir.
No, I'm not finished.
Yes, you are.
Why?
Mr. Tagley?
I have the right to speak from the floor. You don't have the right to shut me off.
I'll recognize you when I'm ready to. Sir, state your name and address.
Pete Tagley, Washington, Connecticut. I don't have to use the microphone tonight?
Apparently not.
I have a couple of issues. I would like to say to the board members, one day you're going to be sitting here and you'll feel differently when you're sitting here and watching what goes on up on the dais up there. And there's a tendency to want to lecture all of you. And we used to have a chair lady that would call me up at night and say, don't come to board meetings and lecture me. So I'd have to call her at home and lecture her. So I'm not going to lecture you tonight. But there's a great tendency to want to do that. But I realize what happens when you sit there. I have a couple of questions regarding the issue that was just commented. Now,
Peter, I'm sorry, we're not here to answer questions. Do you have a comment for the board?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Okay. You mean I can't answer a question about one of the, I just want to clarify.
This is not supposed to be a
Okay, I understand.
a conversation. This is for you, an opportunity for you to comment
Okay,
on agenda items.
okay. I'm going to get me all confused over here. On the policies, this 5.1, I don't know if there was a dollar figure in this policy. I know the board voted or took a vote on an issue of the amount of money.
5% of the annual tuition rate, that's the number.
Well, my comment is that I certainly would not agree with it. And I think that it would behoove the board not to do that because the dollar figures you're dealing with relevant to the dollar figures what it costs taxpayers to underwrite the system. It's a bad idea from a public relations standpoint. I think you do yourself a lot of harm. But that's up to you to decide. The second issue is when you sit out here, one of the things that you notice is how the board handles the superintendent. And my comment regarding this issue is that we're not here to manage the superintendent, she's here to manage the system. And I think that's very important for the board to understand that. I sense at many meetings that people are trying to manage the superintendent. I think that's bad policy. The other issue I wish to raise is, I'm on the committee, one of the many, many committees that are dealing with all of these issues. And tonight, at every meeting I come to, whether it's those meetings or these meetings, is nothing but conjecture, supposition, and people feeling different. I'd like to recommend to the board that to take all the contentiousness out of these issues, that you hire a firm that can verify and certify all of these figures that are coming from people who live in these 3 towns, whether they be members of the board or on these various committees. It is my belief when you get to public forums, you're going to get buried, absolutely buried. And the only way not to be buried is to have someone who comes from outside the issue, outside the system, and look at all the figures that everybody's throwing out and can give you total verification and certification that these figures are true. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting at meetings like this for the rest of your life, and you're going to wind up with nothing. So that would be my recommendation on that. And let's see, I had one other thing, but you handled that. Oh, here's, well, it's not on the agenda, so I won't raise it today.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Carolyn Dwyer from Bridgewater. Bridgewater, once again, was left out of this process. We were left out of finding the real estate consultant. If it's been our issue, then you should have included us in the process. Same with the fixing of the numbers. Again, it doesn't appear great if Bridgewater's the one questioning the numbers to pull in a consolidator from Washington. Again, you've got to look at how it looks. I find it very interesting tonight, you just approved a $17,000 number for a proposal you forgot. You should be ashamed of yourselves. You have a stack of studies, and I'm questioning how many of you actually read them. We've read them. And if you take the studies, you don't need to spend the $17,000. And it's hard to do a $17,000 study on something that doesn't exist. We've never closed an elementary school. You've never left a town in the state of Connecticut without an elementary school. So you're basically studying whether unicorns exist. So good luck. And lastly, the fact that Mr. Cava voted after he saw how the vote was going to go doesn't look great. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I left out one issue.
Mr. Tackman.
Yeah, you threw me a curveball, so. Regarding issue 6, what I would like to request is that the superintendent put together a letter with whatever questions the board needs answered and send it to every broker in the 3 towns. If you want to know who's moving into town, why they're moving, what they're thinking, who knows better than the brokers who sell everybody the houses? They know why people are moving in, why they're moving out, whether the schools are an issue or not an issue. They know the prices, real estate values, the zoning laws, all of those things. And I'm saying that'll give you total certitude, but it will give you a sense as a Board of Ed, without spending a lot of money, as to what the people who are selling the homes to the people who are moving in, why they're moving in. I mean, it would seem the most obvious place to start is with all of the sellers and the buyers. And I think the brokers know that and may be able to help you reach some conclusions.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Julie Stewart from Bridgewater. Since the board's been talking about bringing our enrollment numbers up, we have been doing a number of things in Bridgewater, including working with some area realtors, and I just wanted to share a couple of those things. We started by sending out a townwide newsletter. It was a special edition, and we talked a lot in here about how well our Burnham School was doing, and also alerted people in town to the fact that our demographics are aging, and getting people to shift their minds and thinking about how to attract new families to town. This was sent out to every household in Bridgewater. The selectmen also met with our area realtors on April 25th. We discussed many ideas on how to attract young families to town. The realtors confirmed that a local school within the town is a significant factor for young families, often the most important factor. We've begun implementing some of the ideas that emerged, including an ambassador program for prospective homebuyers. This list of Roxbury and Bridgewater families who have volunteered to be local contacts gives potential buyers an opportunity to get firsthand knowledge of our elementary and middle high schools. We're also looking with Roxbury on applying for a federal program with HUD that allows qualified families to receive, quote, free money for home improvements and remodeling. This would be an excellent way for a young family to purchase a home at a lower price and receive grant money for home improvements. This program is currently in the application phase. We're scheduling a Burnham Blue Ribbon Day on June 13th. There'll be a proclamation made in honor of every student, staff, and administrator for their #1 performance in our JERG on the Connecticut Mastery Tests. Each student will receive a blue ribbon. Press will be there to share this wonderful news about our school and our region. Unfortunately, the attention being given to consolidation is not helping our positive strides. Last Friday, I received many phone calls. 2 came from brand new residents in Bridgewater who I had never met. They both called because they desperately want to save our school. One moved here specifically because of the school. She has a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and she said she will definitely move out of town if we lose our school. The other is a teacher from Fairfield who also moved to Bridgewater because of the school. Her sister, with 3 school-aged children, was also planning to move to Bridgewater. She had a home already selected, but is now reconsidering because of what she is reading in the news about consolidation. These residents and other new families will be jointly writing a letter to confirm their position and offer solid evidence that a significant number of families will not choose a town unless there is a local school. I also began getting calls from Roxbury residents who have concluded that if Booth and Burnham are closed, Chippewa will be next, as there will be few new families coming into these towns and therefore even less students feeding into Chippewa than our bleak enrollment figures suggest. Our steps to attract new families have just begun. I believe our efforts will be successful, and certainly more so if this board can focus on the problems in our region and leave the high-performing elementary schools to continue to be an integral part of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mann.
Suzanne Creech, Bridgewater. I wasn't actually going to say anything, but I'm pretty much a living example of what Julie is talking about. Just to give you a little piece of why I moved here and to give you an idea about whether or not people care if there's a school in their town. I did not buy in the town that we were living in previously after we moved to California. I only dreamed of moving into Bridgewater. My children went to Catholic school last year because I did not like the school in our previous town. I pulled them out for one reason, and that is because they could go to Burnham. And if I do not have the option to send my children to Burnham, I will be putting them back into private school where they were before. The only reason my children are in public school is because of the school in our town.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you. Again, item 7, the tour with Mr. O'Leary of this building will take place after this meeting for anyone who wishes to go. We are not going to have our executive session tonight, so is there a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second.
Alan seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Don, where do you want to start?
Right here.
Over there? Okay.